Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Madam,
Okay,
please begin. We are live now.
okay, fine. So, good morning, everyone. Here with us, Dhara Patel, ma'am, and ma'am is already having 6 years of experience, and she is working as a senior full stack developer. So, today's expert talks guest speaker is Dhara Patel, ma'am. So, please, ma'am, you can start. Shall we start?
Yes. We can start.
Yeah,
Hello,
okay, ma'am.
everyone. Hope you are doing well and have a very good afternoon. I am Dhara Kapatel, and I have been working as a full stack developer since 5 or 6 years. I have majority experience in working with Java, Spring Boot applications, Node.js, React.js, Angular, as well as TypeScript and JavaScript with AWS services. So, for today's session, we are going to get started with Java and Spring Boot application. But as all of you are preparing, must be preparing for your interviews, or before we are getting started with Java, I would like to just let you go through with some object-oriented programming concepts and the basics of Java, so we can get a grip on how to get started with Spring Boot. You must be learning Java and JSP related subjects in your curriculum. But today I have chosen a topic Spring Boot because JSP and servlets are good for curriculum or just for your exams. But the Spring Boot is a upcoming technology, and if we are seeing in market, then the most of the applications or the most of the Java application are built on Spring Boot. So if you're starting with your career, or if you are going to get started in a company, then JSP servlet won't be much of a help in 90% cases. So the Spring Boot will come to picture there. So I have decided topics based on that, so that will help you much on getting started in your company, or getting started with actual development. Are we okay till this point? Okay, so uh, yes. So, everyone of must be aware of what is OOPS concept, object-oriented programming. So, whenever you will appear in interviews or anywhere, the OOPS concept are the basic thing you must be knowing, because if this is not clear, then the rest of the programming or the rest of the logic won't be clear. So, this is the base of any programming language we are using. So basically, I have created a presentation such that it is more on visual side and less on theoretical portion. So it's less boring, and just visualization will help on understanding the more of the concept. As well as at the end of the session, we are going to create some REST APIs, so that will help you get started with Spring Boot. So this is how we are going to get started. The first thing in object oriented programming is the class, object, and methods. There are the core things in any object oriented programming. So we are going to see step by step that how to write classes, how to make object, and what is the method. And then after that, there are four pillars of object oriented programming. There are abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So that those four things are, we are going to see that how it is going to be used in our application. So this is the core object-oriented programming. So basically, object-oriented programming is like Java uses object-oriented programming concepts. There are some other language that they don't use object-oriented programming, like JavaScript. There are scripting languages. So that there is a huge difference between a scripting language and a programming language which uses object-oriented programming. So object-oriented programming help us to make our program or code more clear, more reliable, and robust. So I would suggest that we should use object-oriented programming languages in our application. So it is more error proof. So in next class, next PPT, we are going to see that what is class and what is object. So I have taken reference of Java as a programming language for explaining you the class and the objects. So basically, this is how we are going to write classes. So in class, there is starting point which is public. That is how we that is how we write class. So basically, public is an access modifier. We have 4 access modifiers, that is public, protected, private, and default. We can write any access modifier in our class or in our any property, methods, or variable. So basically, public is whenever we write public as an access modifier, that class or method is accessible by any other class. So that will be public. In protected, our class or method is only accessible by the classes which belong to same package. And the private one will be only accessible by within that class, not outside that class. And default is the same as that we can use that class into same package, not outside that package. So the package in Java is same as we use folders. So the folder is another term or named package in Java. So this is how we are going to write our Java class. In Java class, we are going to have some instance variables like here it is name. Then there is a constructor. So basically we use constructor for initializing our class. So whenever we are going to make object of class, we can initialize our class using constructor. So this is how the constructor is used. In Java, there is basic constructor with no arguments, which is by default given in any class. Then after that, we can define methods like this, get name or any method. So basically how we write methods is covered in the next section. So this is how we are going to write method, and this is the main method. So this is a human class, and how we are going to use that human class is by making the object. So the human is a class, but the John, the object of is the object of the class. So there are basic differences between object and class. So class is a blueprint or template, and the object is the instance. So for human class, we can make any number of objects we want to make. So there is only one human class, and there can be multiple instances of that class. Objects are real world entity like pen, laptop, and class is a group of similar objects. Object is a physical entity, and the class is a logical entity. Object is created with a new keyword. So it is created here, and the class is declared using class keyword. So it is here. Objects are allocated memory when they are created, and class doesn't have any memory because it's just logic. We don't if we want to put that logic into our application, then we have to make class. There are many ways to create object, and there is only one way to define the class. Okay. So this is the basic of class and object and how to write class. The second portion is methods. How can we write methods? So this is the basic blueprint of methods. So it begins with access modifier. After that, there is a return type and there is a method name. So method name should be of camel case and starting with a smaller case. And there should not be any space or special character except underscore in method. And there are parameters. So parameters are the values or variables that we are passing in the method. So this is the basic of our method, and here we are going to write the logic that we should put in the method and return the expected value. So this is the method. There is one example of method is addition. In class addition, we have a method add two integer. So we are going to pass two numbers here. So they are our parameters. And we are going to return the addition of that two number. So that will be our return type. That will be integer. And if we want to call this method, then we can call it like this. This means the reference of this class addition dot add to integer. So this is the first parameter and the 2 is the second parameter. And we are going to get our result in S. So that will be our sum. So what this method does is it acts as a black box, and it doesn't tell the logic behind the function, but it just tell that, okay, pass me two numbers, 1 and 2 or any numbers, and I will give you some of that. Internally what it is doing, how it is maintaining all the thing, it is not known to the outer world. So that is how method works. Then other concepts, the four pillars of object-oriented programming begins with abstraction and encapsulation. So the abstraction is basically what I have told before, is like method acts as a black box and doesn't tell the world that what are the variables it is using, or how it is making that summation, what things they are, what logical operations they are doing. It is not known. So it is abstraction in a case. So here, as we can see, is there is a class named shape, and shape have many different variables and properties like color and width, height, and they it is having area as a method. So when we are it is an abstract class. So what is basically abstract class is, in abstract class we are going to define only the methods and the properties. They are not implemented, means the logic is not written. Whenever the logic needs to be written, then the class is extended. Means if we are making a class named circle, then it is going to extend the abstract class and implement the methods, the required methods. So as in here in circle class, if radius is required, then the radius is going to initialize on creation of our class, and then it is utilized. Same as rectangle. So whenever the rectangle class needs to be created, then the length and width are required, and the area is created based on that. So this is how abstraction works in OOPS programming. And the second concept is encapsulation. So encapsulation is a wrapping of data under a single unit. So as we can say that wrapping the data inside a class or wrapping up data inside a method is encapsulation. It binds together code and the data, and the internal logic is hidden. So that is how the encapsulation works. Another concept is inheritance. So basically, inheritance means inheriting properties of a parent class. So if, for example, in class A, we are having some properties and some methods. If class B is inheriting class A, then the class B will have the properties and methods of class A, as well as properties and methods written in class B. So it is inheriting all the properties of class A. So that is inheritance, and it is written as the base class. So in our case, class A is our base class and class B is derived class. So it works by the extend keyword. So by this way, we can get all the properties of base class in derived class. And there are multiple form of inheritance, single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, or hierarchical inheritance, as we can see in the diagram. Uh, After that, polymorphism is a fourth pillar of object-oriented programming. In polymorphism, uh, there are two types: compile time and runtime polymorphism. Polymorphism means having many forms. So basically, polymorphism is used when we are extending any class in another class. So in as a previous example, when we are using inheritance and our class A, which is a base class, and the class B, which is a derived class, have same methods like it is shown here. Base has a method named fun, and derived has a method named fun. So on runtime, it is going to decide that which method should be called. So it is a overriding of a method. And overloading is a in one class if we are having the same method with the same name but different parameters. So that is a overloading. But in this case, the return type must be different. If it is a integer a and it returns integer, and if we are making a same method name float fun and with integer a, so parameter is same but return type is different, so it is not going to work. In overloading, parameters must be different. So on compile time, it is going to decide that which method should be called here. So it is a overloading. So compile time polymorphism includes method overloading, and runtime polymorphism is an example of method overriding. Um, as we can see in this example, it is a method overriding, example of method overriding. There is one class named animal, which is a base class, and cat and dog are derived classes. So if we are going to make object of cat and we are going to call the method, then it is going to print meow because the cat, it is a method of cat. Similarly, if we are going to call a method of dog, it is going to give us bark likewise. So this is the basics of object oriented programming. If anyone of you are having any question, then you can raise, otherwise we can move forward with Java. Are we good to go? So basically, what is first thing that comes in our mind is what is Java, and why should we use Java as our programming language? Personally, I prefer Java over any other programming language because in JavaScript there is some chances of errors, or it is not that mature. JavaScript not that mature as Java, because Java has multiple inbuilt things that are provided. It is simple. It is platform independent. It is multi-threaded in use, and very rich libraries that is included with Java. And basically, Java is an object-oriented programming language and a software platform that runs on billions of devices. Uh, Java rules and syntax are based on C and C++ languages. As we can see in graph that currently it is the second most used programming language after JavaScript. But there are many uh, cons of using Java also, because it is slow and the memory requirement is high. So you must have noticed that when you are running Java or Java based application, your computer or PC might get slowed down. It takes initial some time to get started or to compile, and the paid commercial license is also a problem. So, but there are also bright sides of Java. So it is highly in use currently, and it is very recommended way of making REST APIs or any web services that are being used. Okay. Second is Java basics. So Java has some basic blocks that we should understand before getting started with deeper with Java. So Java has a main method, which is the entry point for any Java application. So from that point, our Java program is being initialized and started. So all the initialization stuff is done in that main method. Second things are the list of the keywords that are used in Java, class and objects that we have previously discussed in OOPS concept. They were based on the Java syntax. Then the package, literals, string literals, how to write methods in Java, interfaces in Java, what are the different data types, and how to write variables in Java, and arrays in Java. So we can see the topics one by one. So the first things are the control statements and operators in Java. So basically, as every programming language has, Java have some control statements. So basically, control statements help us in writing our core logic in application. If our business logic is like, if grand total is above 500, then give 10% discount, otherwise give 15% discount. Okay. So likewise, we can use it, we can use our business logic into the our programming is via control statements. So there are if else statements, switch cases, then that will help us in this logics. Other thing are loop statements. So in Java, we have 4 type of loop: do while loop, for loop, and for each loop. Basically, we use for loop in most cases. So that will help us in on iterating the list of object, or when we are getting multiple entries, or iterating any arrays, then the loop is the most used thing. And the jump statements are break and continue. So break will break uh, the flow of our method, and it will give a the break statement will complete our function will be completed. And in continue, if we are using any loop, then that loop that iteration is skipped. Other thing is operators. So we have unary operators, arithmetic operator, logical shifts, relational operators, which is a greater than equal to, less than equal to, or equal to, comparators, bitwise operator. Logical operators are most widely used, and or. The ternary condition is the short form of if condition. Before question mark, our condition is going to be there. After that question mark, our first statement will be there, and later the second statement, and the assignment operators. So this is how the operators are. It is just a higher level view of what are the operators and control statements. These are the basic keywords that are used in Java. Abstract, assert, the most widely we use is class, constant, then if else, there are if else, the void return type, as switch cases. So this is the basic keyword list. The important portion here is the Java data types. So in data types, we have primitive data types and non-primitive data types. In primitive data types, we have Boolean, numeric data types, and here it is a character, then a string, byte, integer, long, float. There are different things that we can store in different data types, like if the user has subscribed this email or not, then we can use Boolean data type for that. If there is a quantity, then we can store it inside integer. If there is a price, then we can store it inside a float. If we have to store name, then we can store it inside a string data type. If there is a list of marks or list of subjects, that we can store it inside array. As well as whatever class we are going to make will act as a data type also. This is the basic data types. Okay. This is all the things we should be knowing before getting started with Spring Boot. So are we good to get started with Spring Boot? Anyone is having any issue or doubt? Okay. So basically, Java Spring Boot is a framework that we use for making Java-based application. So first thing that will come into mind is why we are using Spring Boot and what is Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is based on a Spring framework, and Spring framework is an open source application framework that provides infrastructure support for developing Java based application. So Spring Boot is having all the things for all the things that are essential in Spring framework, plus all the things in Java. And based on that, it gives embedded servers like Tomcat or Jetty, and as well as we don't need XML configurations in that. So Spring Boot is a whole package. So like if we are using in practical, then there is almost no application or no third party service that is not built in Spring Boot. So it is just like plug and play. We can directly get the plugin for that third party application and just write in our Spring Boot, and it is going to get started. We don't need to write our own logic. So it is really helpful in that case. And why we should use Spring Boot? So as it is mentioned, the dependency injection approach is used in Spring Boot. It contains powerful database transaction management. It simplifies integration with JPA, Hibernate, or ORM or struts, etc. And it reduces cost of development of application, because we don't really need to worry about how to connect with database or how to manage the repositories, and how to do all the how to manage all the packages. All that things are done by Spring Boot. We just need to get started with our business logic. Okay, so Spring Boot basically uses MVC infrastructure. MVC is a model, view, and controller. So as we can see, in some of the application, right, if we are making any API in Node.js or in any other framework, then there won't be necessarily MVC framework. But Spring Boot is based on MVC framework. So the model means the data portion, the view portion, that will be a UI or the interface layer, and the controller. So the API portion are three individual portions, and they are connected. It's not like that there is one file in that all the things are written: model, view, and controller. So our code becomes clumsy and it is hard to read if all the things are together. Also, we need decoupled code if we want to make as a web service, or if we want to reuse the code. So that is how it is more helpful. Second thing, the thing, if we are getting started with Spring Boot, then the second thing is to know our annotations. So for configuration, we don't need to write anything in XML or form that this is my controller or this is my service, or we don't need to manually do anything. If we are going to write @service, then that file will be considered as service file. If we are going to write @rest controller, then that file will be counted as a controller file. So these are all the annotation that will be used in our REST application. Spring Boot application annotation define the starting point of our Spring Boot application. So from this point, our Spring Boot application is getting started, and we can initialize all the things in this class or the main method of this class. @service define the service files. @autowired is used for making object. @rest controller defines the controller files. @request mapping defines endpoint of the controller. @get mapping and @post mapping defines the REST APIs. If it is a GET API or a POST API, we can get into more details in next discussion regarding that annotation. Okay. The second thing will be how to get started with Spring Boot. So there is a Spring initializer already exists in on the web. So we can go to this URL. Here we just need to configure that what packages are needed in our application. According to that, the full Spring Boot application is going to be initialized and downloaded in the system. When we are unzipping and running the command, the prerequisites for getting Spring Boots are to install Maven package inside our system, as well as we will need Java 8 or 11 or any higher version than that in our system. So if we are matching prerequisite and the Maven is installed, then we can build our Spring Boot application using this command, mv clean install. Our application is going to be built and checked for any test cases if exist. If we are running mv Spring Boot run, then our application is going to be started on the defined port in our system. So basically by default, it will be 8080 port. On that, our application is going to be started. So these two commands are most important. There are other commands as well. Okay. The third thing is important is in Spring Boot is a JPI repository. So what is JPI repository basically? So JPI repository manages all the things that that are related to database, like the connections, then how to get data, how to translate data into object. If we are reading data from database and it should be converted to the object like product. So JPA manages all the things, as well as on top of that, JPA gives us some default function. It acts as ORM, uh, and it will give some basic functions like find we don't need to use native queries or any SQL queries in our code. We can directly get all the products by find all. Or if we want to find any specific, then we can find like find by this ID. So this is all uh, given in JPA repository, as well as if you want to store any object, then that object dot repository dot save, that will save as well as update our object if it doesn't if it already exists. So this is the JPA repository that we are going to use. Okay, so we are going to get started with making REST API in Spring Boot. So basically, first thing that will come in mind is what is API. So it is a application programming interface which allows two programs to communicate on the web. API sits between an application and a web server and facilitate the transfer of the data. Okay, so imagine you are logging to Facebook and there is Facebook server. So when you are typing in your username and password, then there will be an intermediate API that is going to get your username and password to the server and tell the server that validate this username and password and return the response if it is authenticated, means the password is right or not. So that is basically in API's work. So as we can see in this figure, like first portion of API is a request. So in this example, when we are passing username and password, it is our request. Then receive means the server receives that request and process it. And the third is a response. So response is when that request is processed, then we can know that if the username password are correct or not, and the response is sent back. So that is the third portion of the API. So as we can see, this is how the API looks. Yeah. So there are two types of APIs, REST APIs versus SOAP APIs. But to my knowledge, 90% of the APIs are REST APIs because they are very easy to implement and very easy to use instead of SOAP APIs. So basically, SOAP is a simple object access protocol and REST is a representational state transfer. So in SOAP, the data transfer happens in XML, and in REST we can choose any language like XML, JSON, or XML, or any text-based data. On SOAP API, the work is need to be done on both sides. Like first to convert all the data to XML, then send it over SOAP, and then receive that data and work on the XML data. But on REST, we can just transfer it using JSON, and it is easy to use and it is very much better. As we can see here, performance is not great compared to REST, but for SOAP, but this REST APIs are much more less CPU intensive. Also in SOAP, our data request and response are going to be heavier and it requires more bandwidth other than REST. So we can get started with REST APIs. Okay, in REST APIs, they perform over HTTP. So the base of the REST APIs are HTTP. We send all the data over HTTP or HTTPS protocol. In API, we will have different request types like get, post, put, delete, and patch. They are all for different reasons. If we can get started one by one, then get will be to get all the data from server. Post will be to post any data or to add anything on the server. Put will be if you want, if there is data already exists on the server and if you want to update, then put will be used. Delete will be used to delete some resources from the server, and the patch will be used if you want to change anything on the server. The request types are basically this, and our API endpoint will look like this. So they work over HTTP protocol. The first thing here will be the host name, and the after colon it will be a port of the server. This will be application context. This is how our endpoint looks. There will be a version. There will be a resource like slash users or slash products, what we want to get, or what is this API is about. This will be endpoint name. And there are parameters. So this is the basic API endpoint. So this is all the things that we need to get started with our Spring Boot application. I'm going to share VS Code, and I'm going to explain you how the Spring Boot API or CRUD APIs are made in Spring Boot. Is my screen visible? VS Code?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible.
Okay. So in Spring Boot application, I have installed it from Spring Initializer, and it gives us a project structure like this. The first important thing in Spring Boot is pom.xml. In pom.xml, it is the base of our Spring Boot. So here we define all the packages that we need for our applications. It is in this dependency section. So we can add dependencies here. So if we want to add anything third party, like if we are using Amazon services, or if we want to use change any database, like from Postgres I want to use MySQL, then we can change it from here. We can add the plugin here that I was previously talking about. We can add a Java version here. We can add the description of our program here. All the things that will be included here. So the pom.xml is the most crucial thing in our Spring Boot application. Second thing, the target. So here, when we are doing ambient clean install, then our jar files will be created here, and we can access the jar file from this target folder. So all the build file is going to be here. Third thing is there is one package called main and one is test. So in main, we are going to write API and all the things that we are going to perform in our service. So that will be our coding portion. And second, the test will be our like for writing the test cases for the files. So our test cases will be here. Inside main, we have resources. So in resources, what we are going to put, like if there are any PDFs or PNG images or anything that is static, that is not going to change over a period, so that we store in resources. As we have this application properties in resources. So here we don't usually commit this file, because it includes our here our database passwords or database URLs are going to be included in application properties. It is very much recommended that we use our database credential from application properties, not hard-coded values. And it is also gives us flexibility of writing our own variables. Like if you want to make application dot name equal to test project. So whenever I'm going to access this application dot name, the test project will dynamically be accessed in my program. So this is how we can achieve the dynamic variables in our application. Second, in Java, we have MVC folder structure, as I have previously discussed. Model, so it will be, the model will be in the in entity folder that is mentioned here. We have controllers, and there is a view portion services. Basically, and this is the entry point of our program. It is annotated with @Spring Boot application, and we have a main function. From here, our Spring Boot application is getting started. We can go flow by flow from here. So this is our controller. This is how our REST controller looks like in the Spring Boot. Here we are annotating it with a REST controller, so we don't have to manually define or manually configure anywhere that these are my API endpoints or this is my REST controller. It is going to Spring Boot is going to take automatically all the endpoints defined here. Then this is the entity. In entity, we are going to define the same structure that we have made in our database. So in database, I have made a products table. So I am mentioning the name of the table as a product. My database is on localhost 5432. It's a Postgres database. We can define that class, and it is having ID, name, quantity, all the properties. So this is going to be my entity, and the entity will be accessible by JPA repository. So as I have talked about JPA repository, that for products, I have product repository, and I can use that product repository to get any data from database, to store or modify any data from database. So this is all the things that JPA repository gives inbuilt, and we don't need to write any manual SQL queries. Find by name, find by ID. So it will be it will be basically, if we are having a property name quantity, then we can get it like find by price, find by quantity, likewise. So this is how our JPA repository will look like. And okay, so for products, if you want to get all the products, the endpoint is /products bulk. And if you want to get any specific product, then /products. It will give the list. Then if you want to get any product by ID, then it gives ID. So if we are going to see this controller step by step, the first thing that we should consider it naming with @REST controller. So it is defined as a controller. Then we are using AutoGuide here to make the instance of product service. So the AutoGuide is used here. So second, if we are going to get started with this API endpoint, then it is defined as @get mapping. So our API is get API, and our endpoint is /products/ID. And if we are writing anything in this curly braces, that will be a dynamic thing. Means I can pass 1 here, 2 here, anything from Postman. So that ID will be accessible here in path variable. So this is our method, controller method, find product by ID. Here we are going to get path variable in ID, and we are going to get this product from service. So this is the second layer of our application, that is service. While we write all the data in services, it will be very reusable to use services. Means that get products method will be used anywhere in our code, and it will be reusable and readable to use service. So here we are using @service annotation, and in @service annotation define that it is a service. We are using repository here. So as we can see, we can directly call repository to get all the things from database, like dot save to save the things. Then dot if it doesn't exist, it creates a new entry in database. If the entry with same ID exists, then it updates the things, the dot save method. If you are using dot find by ID, then it will find by that ID in that table and return the product. Likewise, if we want to create anything, then we can use post mapping, post, and this is the add product. We are going to get product namings in our request. So it will come to the service, and it will save dot with a dot save method of repository. So our product will be saved. Secondly, if we want to delete anything, then we can pass the product ID and the product data here. So by searching that ID, that product will be deleted from our database. So this is the basic CRUD repository and CRUD controller and service for the product. If we want to see how that works, then we can. I'll not take more minutes. I'll just quickly share my Postman, that how our repository or our service is going to run. Is my Postman visible? Okay. So first of all, we have created one GET service. So this is our HTTP request type. Here we are selecting GET. This is our endpoint. This is our host. This is the port, and this is our API endpoint / products. And we have null body as of now. So if we are firing this API, it is going to give us one product, because I have previously saved one product here. This is how our GET API is going to look. If we want to post something in this, then we can send it in the request body. So this is how we can access the request body, and our request type will be JSON here. I'm changing some name here. Okay. So if this is post, this is going to add a product to in my server. So it is adding, and I've got this. Okay. Now if we are going to fire that GET API again, then I am going to get two products, because one is first I have saved one first and then second. So this is how we can use REST API to create, to update, or to delete anything on the server. This is all from my side for the Spring CRUD API. If anyone wants code, they can email me. I will share the code with them. If you have any question, then please feel free to ask me about the Spring Boot or Postman, anything.
Students, if you have any question, you can send in QA session.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Ma'am, students send me a few questions. They want to know any practical example on the runtime polymorphism.
Runtime polymorphism.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Good question. In runtime polymorphism, as I have mentioned here, let me go back to that slide. Okay, so as we can see here, it is the example of runtime polymorphism. What will happen here is there is one base class, animal. Have all animals have properties like to make noise. Okay, but whenever what happens is we are extending that animal class for a cat. Cat is also having method name make noise, but the cat's method name make noise will have different implementation than animals make noise implementation. So on runtime it is going to see that do I have to call the method of animal or do I have to call that method from cat class. If the cat class doesn't have that implementation or that overridden method, then the animals make noise method is going to be called. And so instead of printing meow here, it is going to print anything like speak if anyone is speaking. Likewise. So this is the example of runtime polymorphism.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And next question is, any specific advantage of Spring Boot framework, which is specific available in Spring Boot?
Okay. I'm practically working with Spring Boot over more than 3 years. So I think the major advantage of using Spring Boot is it gives us the whole package. Like if we want to code in Spring, then we will need we will have to manage the server for that. Or if we are making any APIs, this were the simple CRUD APIs. But if we want to make APIs, which includes the authentication or multi-tenancy or some role-based access, then all the things are by default provided in Spring Boot. So there are classes or there are implementation and configuration. There are those are inbuilt in Spring Boot that we may use. So the thing I came across was multi-tenancy. Means the data of one company is separated from data of second company. They exist in same database. So that if that problem comes in any other programming language, then we have to make the solution for that. So in Node.js, we may have to write a separate code or separate logic for all manage all the things. But in Spring Boot, it is already given. We just need to pass some annotations like I want data from this tenant, and the Spring Boot manages all the internally. So I think that is the main advantage of using Spring Boot, that all the things are inbuilt in here, and all the third party, like if we want to access any authentication service or anything uh, that we require, the if we want if we are adding dependency in pom.xml, that will be we don't need to worry about writing drivers for that. So that is the difference.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And it's really a great and informative session. And in a small span of time, you have covered a lot topics in detail, which practical example you have given. So like OOPS concept, Spring Boot framework, and Postman, which is really practical working of development. So I am really thankful to you from FITCS department and really you given your precious time and encourage our students and guide them to for future. And I'm really thankful to Dean ma'am, uh, who is giving she, she's giving their precious time here. And I'm asking inviting Dean ma'am to say a few words for the session.
Thank you. I really enjoyed teaching, and my main aim was that to make interview process, or to make this REST API portion easy for the students, and to make them familiar with what is going currently in industry. So this is how I decided all the topics. I really enjoyed working with you guys.
Hello. I'm inviting Dean ma'am to say a few words. Okay, maybe some communication problem is there. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again
No
for
problem.
the great session and giving your precious time.
No
Thank you
problem.
so much.
All the best, everyone. Thank you.